Good day. My name is Stephen Doneski. I am a partner in Feeley Driscoll's Healthcare and Human Service practice. Today I plan to spend a few minutes discussing the provisions of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Surplus Revenue Retention Regulations for human and social service organizations that provide those services pursuant to a contractual agreement with the Commonwealth's Operational Services Division. Should you have any questions regarding the information discussed, please feel free to call me at 888-875-9770. The Revenue Retention Regulations, last updated in 1994, stipulate that nonprofit providers of services pursuant to contracts with Commonwealth purchasing agencies may retain a portion of the surplus not to exceed 5% of the Commonwealth source revenues for any particular year. On a cumulative basis, the organization's surplus revenue may not exceed 20% of the prior year's Commonwealth revenue. The surplus revenue attributable to Commonwealth-funded programs is calculated by way of an embedded formula in the Uniform Financial Report Excel template. The formula essentially recalculates the organization's surplus or deficit for the year using a ratio of Commonwealth revenues to total program revenues. That ratio is then applied to the program surplus or deficit to arrive at the Commonwealth attributed surplus or deficit for the year. All Commonwealth-funded programs results are then aggregated to determine the organization's total surplus revenue or deficit for the year. In its desire to be an authoritative source for financial reporting requirements, the Commonwealth's policy also requires that organizations disclose the components of the revenue retention surplus or deficit in their financial statements. The disclosure requirements include beginning of year accumulated surplus or deficit balance, reporting year surplus or deficit attributable to the Commonwealth-funded programs, transactions occurring during the year that impacted the cumulative balance in the surplus deficit fund, the end-of-year accumulated surplus or deficit balance, and the amount of accumulated surplus revenue that is in excess of the 20% of prior year Commonwealth revenues, the cumulative cap excess. Organizations should be mindful of program and funding changes that can impact its profitability and, in turn, the amount of surplus revenue generated by Commonwealth-funded programs. Rate changes, such as the impact of Chapter 257 adjustments, program efficiencies, and enrollment changes all have the potential to generate surpluses above the 5% threshold. As management reviews and analyzes financial results and budgets for future operations, it should be sure to include a pro-forma calculation of the surplus revenue for the organization. By anticipating the impact of program and funding changes, management will be able to adjust the organization's expenditures accordingly and minimize any potential obligation associated with the surplus revenue retention policy. Pursuant to the submission of the annual Uniform Financial Report, the Operational Services Division will determine whether surplus revenue exists and whether its determination is consistent with the amount identified by the provider organization in the UFR. Once a surplus revenue amount has been identified, the Operational Services Division will notify each agency of the surplus attributed to its programs. To minimize any potential repayment of purchasing agency funding, provider organizations should take a proactive approach to managing any surplus revenue amounts. Typically, surplus revenue may be expended for activities and programs which are in accordance with the charitable purpose of the organization. Organization management should negotiate with the purchasing agency to ensure that surplus revenues can be retained and utilized for subsequent program activities and program beneficiaries. Without a plan that can demonstrate the organization's commitment to its programs and its clients, the ultimate disposition of the surplus revenue could result in the repayment of funds or a reduction in future program prices and funding levels. I hope that the information I've discussed provides a good foundation for the management of the surplus revenue retention calculation and the significant factors associated with the Commonwealth's enforcement of the reporting and accountability requirements governing the surplus revenue retention policy as embodied in the Massachusetts regulations. If you have any questions or additional considerations you would like to discuss, please feel free to call me at 888-875-9770 or visit us on the web at www.fdcpa.com. Thanks for joining me and have a good day.